The Temple of Jupiter holds stones heavier than 3 blue whales. This is the mystery of Baalbek, an ancient site where builders moved 800-ton blocks without any machinery we would recognize. By the end of this, you will understand the most compelling theories behind one of history's greatest architectural puzzles. We will examine how these stones were quarried, transported, and lifted into a position that seems to defy the physics of the ancient world. What does this colossal achievement tell us about the people who built it, and what secrets might still be buried with them? When you see what humanity accomplished with only ropes, wood, and sheer will, it makes you wonder what we have forgotten about our own potential. These 800-ton stones rest at the heart of a place once called Heliopolis, the city of the sun. This was not a random construction site, but a location sacred for thousands of years before a single Roman engineer ever arrived. To truly grasp the magnitude of what was attempted here, we need to step into the lush strip of land cradled between mountain ranges. For centuries, this valley served as a grand crossroads, a meeting point for Phoenician traders, Hellenistic thinkers, and the unstoppable march of Roman legions. Each culture left its mark, layer upon layer, transforming the site into a spiritual magnet long before the Temple of Jupiter's foundation was laid. The Romans, brilliant strategists in both war and symbolism, recognized the power already held by this place. They did not simply build a new temple from scratch. They embarked on a monumental act of architectural persuasion. By expanding a pre-existing sanctuary on a staggering, unprecedented scale, they aimed to redirect an ancient river of local devotion toward their own supreme god, Jupiter. This context changes everything. The sheer weight of those stones becomes more than a physics problem. It transforms into a statement. Each block was a declaration of imperial might, a deliberate attempt to visually and spiritually overwhelm, to assert that the new order was not just politically superior but divinely sanctioned. The mystery, therefore, is not just how they moved the stones, but why they felt they had to move stones of such impossible size. What were they trying to prove, and to whom? The answer lies in understanding that the temple was always meant to be more than a building. It was a weapon of ideology carved from the living rock of the mountain itself. But to understand that statement, you have to stand before the Trilithon. This is the core of the mystery, a platform of 3 colossal limestone blocks resting at the base of the temple's western wall. Each one is a monster of stone, estimated to weigh between 800 and 1,000 tons. To put that into a modern perspective, that is heavier than 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 jumbo jets. These are not rough foundation stones buried in the earth. They are precision-cut monoliths hauled from a quarry nearly a kilometer away and then lifted with impossible care to form a section of the temple's towering podium. Their length is staggering. Each block stretches longer than the largest blue whale ever recorded. Simply seeing them forces the same question to the front of your mind, a question whispered by every visitor for 2,000 years: how? The physical evidence only deepens the puzzle. The joints between these titanic blocks are works of art in themselves. They are fitted together so precisely that the gaps are measured in fractions of a millimeter. It is often said and demonstrated that not even a razor blade can be slipped between them. This speaks to a stoneworking skill of almost unimaginable finesse, a level of craftsmanship that in some technical aspects seems to rival or even surpass the engineering seen in later Roman projects. To examine the Trilithon up close is to confront the sheer, tangible scale of a problem that has consumed historians, archaeologists, and engineers for centuries. It is one thing to read about a heavy stone. It is another to stand in its shadow and try to comprehend the movement of a small mountain. The answer to that how begins not at the temple, but a short walk away in the silent, sun-baked quarry that birthed these giants. Here, the sheer scale of the ambition becomes almost overwhelming. Carved directly from the bedrock is a single limestone block known today as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. It is a behemoth that makes the Trilithon stone seem almost modest, weighing an estimated 1,000 tons. This is not a finished block resting in a wall. It is a monument to a process frozen in time. The monolith was partially carved out from the surrounding rock and then, for reasons lost to history, simply left behind. You can still see the precise, clean channels cut by workers to separate it from the earth. The tool marks a permanent record of their labor. Its presence is a critical clue, a snapshot of the extraction process caught mid-action. This tells us something profound. The builders were not just capable of quarrying blocks of 800 tons, they were actively preparing to move a block that was even larger. The Stone of the Pregnant Woman is a statement of intent, proving that the Trilithon was not the upper limit of their plans. So why was it abandoned? Was it a calculated decision, perhaps a shift in architectural design or imperial priorities? Or did the builders finally meet a logistical challenge even their ingenuity could not overcome? A final threshold where the sheer weight of the stone defeated even the most clever systems of ropes, ramps, and manpower. This solitary giant offers no easy answers, only silent testimony to the breathtaking scope of a project that pushed ancient engineering to its very edge. Roman engineering was a symphony of organized force and brilliant simplicity. To move the colossal statues and columns that defined their empire, they developed a toolkit of ingenious machines. They built wooden cranes powered not by engines, but by the steady, collective effort of men walking inside giant hamster wheels, turning a capstan that wound heavy ropes. They mastered the mechanical advantage of pulleys, multiplying human strength many times over. For truly heavy loads, they would construct enormous wooden sledges, place them on lubricated wooden tracks, and use teams of oxen or hundreds of men on ropes to pull them forward, inch by laborious inch. They understood the power of the inclined plane, building massive earthen ramps to drag stones up to great heights, a method famously used in constructing the Egyptian pyramids millennia before. These were not secrets, but the well-documented practical technologies of an empire that built aqueducts, colosseums, and roads that still stand today. Their logistical networks could transport 100-ton obelisks across the Mediterranean Sea on specially built barges. Yet, when we place these remarkable, known capabilities next to the 800-ton stones of Baalbek, a strange gap appears. It is the difference between moving a grand piano and moving an entire house. The known Roman methods could theoretically be scaled up, but the scale required is almost unimaginable. To move a single Trilithon block using their standard sledge and ramp technique, historians estimate it would have required the coordinated pulling force of several thousand men on ropes, all moving in perfect unison on a perfectly prepared roadway that could support the incomprehensible weight without collapsing. The precision needed to then lift such a block and set it gently into its millimeter-perfect position adds another layer of near-impossible complexity. So we are left with a compelling question. Was the construction of the Baalbek podium a singular Herculean event, a once-in-a-lifetime marshalling of regional manpower and ingenuity that pushed every known technique to its absolute breaking point? Or does its existence hint at a more profound possibility that Roman engineers, or perhaps the local master builders they employed, possessed a lost method for mega-scale construction, a secret of leverage or counterweight that was so specialized it was never written down, used only for the most sacred and symbolic of projects? The stones themselves do not say, they only testify that it was done. Yet this focus on a single, staggering weight is what makes Baalbek an outlier in the ancient world. To truly appreciate its strangeness, we must look elsewhere, to other sites where humanity wrestled stone on a monumental scale. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid stands as a testament to organized mass. Its construction involved moving millions of limestone blocks, each averaging about 2.5 tons. The achievement here was one of breathtaking logistics and sustained labor over decades, a symphony of countless smaller movements adding up to a mountain. Across the ocean in Peru, the Inca fortress of Sacsayhuaman showcases a different kind of genius, polygonal masonry. Here, stones of many tons were carved into intricate, irregular shapes and fitted together without mortar, like a three-dimensional stone puzzle so tight it has survived centuries of earthquakes. Even the famous Moai statues of Easter Island, while towering and mysterious, represent a different challenge. Their elongated forms carved from volcanic tuff and transported horizontally, with estimated weights far less than a single Trilithon block. When you place Baalbek among these wonders, a distinct pattern emerges. While others mastered the movement of many heavy stones or the perfect fitting of complex shapes, the builders at the Temple of Jupiter chose a path of maximum brute force. They were not assembling a mosaic of manageable pieces. They were deliberately selecting, moving, and placing the heaviest single loads ever attempted in the ancient world. This was not the only way to build something immense, so why was it their way? The comparative view suggests their goal was not merely structural but profoundly symbolic. The technological statement itself was the message. By using stones so large that their very movement seemed to defy possibility, they created a spectacle of power that was immediate and undeniable. It was a declaration meant to be understood not through intricate carvings or complex theology, but through the visceral, humbling experience of standing in the shadow of the impossible. The weight of the stone was the weight of their authority. The true test of ingenuity was not in carving the stones, but in coaxing them to move. To transport an 800-ton block even a single kilometer is a problem that would strain modern engineering. So how did they do it without steel cables or diesel engines? One of the most widely accepted theories points to a technology the Romans knew intimately: the wooden sledge. Imagine a colossal platform of thick timber built to cradle the limestone giant. This sledge would then be placed not on bare ground, but on a carefully constructed roadway of wooden rails, greased with animal fat or slick mud to reduce friction. The pulling force would have been almost unimaginable. Historical estimates suggest it would require the combined strength of several thousand men, or hundreds of oxen, all harnessed to long, heavy ropes. The coordination alone boggles the mind, a symphony of shouted commands where a single misstep could mean disaster. They would have moved at a pace slower than growing grass, perhaps only a few dozen meters per day, with teams constantly repairing the road and reapplying lubricant. Every inch of progress was a victory of sheer, organized will over the immovable mass of the stone. Another, more speculative idea involves water. Could the builders have created a temporary canal or a system of flooded trenches, floating the stones on barges? Water is a brilliant natural lubricant, drastically reducing the effective weight of an object. In theory, a stone that weighs 800 tons on land becomes far easier to maneuver once buoyant. There is evidence the Romans used such methods to move heavy obelisks in Egypt. Yet at Baalbek, the local topography presents a formidable challenge. The quarry sits slightly above the temple site, which would require a complex system of locks or dams to control the water flow, or an immense effort to haul the stones uphill after the float. While not impossible, this method adds layers of hydraulic engineering to an already monumental task. Each hypothesis, the sledge or the canal, paints a picture of a society operating at the absolute peak of its organizational capacity. It was not enough to have a brilliant architect or a clever foreman. This endeavor required the total mobilization of an entire region. It meant feeding and housing an army of workers, not soldiers. It meant managing quarriers, carpenters, rope makers, road builders, and animal handlers in a coordinated effort that could last for years. The economic power needed to sustain such a project is staggering to contemplate. It makes you wonder about the unseen hierarchy, the quiet managers and logisticians whose names are lost to history, but whose planning made the impossible merely difficult. Their true achievement may not be in the stone they moved, but in the movement of the society that moved it. But moving the stone was only the beginning of the challenge. Once that 800-ton block arrived at the construction site, the builders faced a problem that seems to defy gravity itself. They had to lift it with perfect control, over 20 feet straight up into the air, and then set it down on its podium with a precision measured in millimeters. Think of trying to lift a fully loaded freight train car by hand, and then placing it so gently onto a shelf that it does not even wobble. This is the lifting enigma of Baalbek, and it may be an even greater puzzle than the transport. We know the Romans had incredible cranes, machines like the Polyspastos, which used complex systems of pulleys and ropes wound by teams of men walking in a large treadmill. These devices were engineering marvels capable of hoisting the massive columns that lined their forums. Yet even the most powerful Roman crane we have evidence for had a theoretical limit far, far below 800 tons. Using such a machine on the Trilithon stones would be like trying to lift an elephant with a fishing rod. The mechanics simply do not scale. So what was their method? The most widely accepted theory involves the ancient world's ultimate tool for elevation, the earthen ramp. The idea is simple in concept but staggering in execution. Workers would have built a colossal ramp of packed earth, stone, and timber, rising at a shallow angle from the ground right up to the top of the podium wall. The stone, already on its giant sledge, would then be dragged up this incline by the same immense teams used for transport. It is a slow, grinding process of incremental victory, where each day's work might raise the stone only a few feet. But here we encounter another layer of the mystery, the issue of precision. Dragging a multi-hundred-ton block up a dirt ramp is an act of brute force. How do you then maneuver it with the finesse required to achieve those razor-thin joints? The final placement suggests a secondary system, perhaps a forest of wooden levers and hydraulic jacks, allowing teams to make microscopic adjustments once the stone was near its final position. They might have used a system of counterweights, slowly lowering the block into place with a control that a straight pull could never provide. This points to a hybrid approach, a marriage of monumental force for the big movement and delicate, patient engineering for the final fit. The gap between our understanding of Roman technology and the physical evidence at Baalbek is not a void of knowledge, but a space filled with the echo of thousands of forgotten techniques, of clever tricks and practical solutions that were never written down because they were the domain of the master builder, not the scholar. The silent perfection of those stone joints is their only testimony. Behind every stone lifted by ropes and ramps was a human being. The sheer scale of the Baalbek project demands we consider the social engine that powered it, the vast and varied workforce that transformed an emperor's vision into solid rock. Historical records from the Roman period are frustratingly silent on the exact numbers and identities of the people who built the Temple of Jupiter. Official accounts preferred to celebrate the glory of the empire and the genius of its architects, not the toil of the laborers. Yet, by examining the standard practices of Roman engineering and the colossal requirements of this specific site, we can reconstruct a probable picture. It would have required a small city of workers, a complex hierarchy stretching from the master architect and skilled stonemasons down to the countless unskilled hands that pulled the ropes and moved the earth. The muscle for such an endeavor likely came from a combination of sources common to the empire. There would have been skilled artisans, perhaps drawn from across the Roman world, who commanded the precise geometry of the stone cutting. But the immense physical labor, the grinding daily work of quarrying, hauling, and ramp building, would have fallen to a different group. It is widely understood by historians that large Roman construction projects relied heavily on enslaved individuals, prisoners taken in military campaigns, and conscripted local populations. This was not an act of malevolence so much as a standard economic and logistical reality of the time, a societal structure that viewed mass organized labor as a resource to be deployed. The human cost, measured in years of strenuous effort and the inevitable toll such work takes on the body, would have been immense. To move a single 800-ton block likely required the coordinated effort of thousands, all working in unison for months or even years, facing the constant risk of accident and the certainty of exhaustion. This social dimension adds a necessary layer of sobering reality to the architectural wonder. When we marvel at the precision of the stone joints, we are also looking at the culmination of innumerable individual acts of labor. The mystery of Baalbek, therefore, expands. It is no longer just a technical puzzle of physics and engineering, but a profound question about human organization and societal values. What kind of social machinery was capable of marshalling, housing, feeding, and directing such a force for such a long period? The project's success speaks to a breathtaking level of administrative control, a system that could manage the logistics of survival for an army of builders just as effectively as it managed the movement of mountains. It makes us reflect on the dual legacy of such sites. They stand as eternal testaments to human ingenuity and collective ambition, yet they are also monuments to a social order where such ambition was built upon foundations of widespread and demanding labor. Understanding this does not diminish the achievement, but rather deepens it, framing the stones not as alien artifacts, but as the direct products of a specific time, place, and the complex human systems that made them possible. The true foundation of the Temple of Jupiter may not be the rock of the mountain, but the collective effort of the society that dared to reshape it. The sheer weight of the stones pushes our imaginations toward the edge of the possible. When standard explanations of sledges and ramps feel stretched to their absolute limit, the mind naturally wanders into more speculative territory. Could the builders of Baalbek have possessed a secret, a lost technology that allowed them to defy the crushing logic of weight and friction? This question has given rise to a fascinating array of alternative theories, each attempting to solve the puzzle where conventional archaeology falls silent. Some point to ancient legends and texts from cultures around the world that speak of stones moved by sound, of priests or sages using chants or specific frequencies to make massive objects weightless, a concept known as acoustic levitation. It is a compelling idea, a kind of sonic magic that would render ropes and ramps obsolete. Yet, for all its poetic appeal, there is not a single piece of verified archaeological evidence at Baalbek or anywhere else to support its practical use on such a scale. The theory remains in the realm of intriguing myth, a whisper from the past that we cannot quite prove or fully dismiss. Another modern hypothesis looks not to magic, but to a different kind of ancient science, the idea of a geopolymer. This theory suggests that the massive blocks were not quarried and hauled at all, but were instead created on site using a form of advanced concrete, a liquid stone poured into wooden molds. Such a process would elegantly bypass the entire transportation nightmare. The problem is in the stone itself. Detailed material analysis of the Trilithon blocks shows they are cut from a specific layer of natural limestone, complete with consistent fossil patterns and grain structures that run continuously across each entire block. This is the unmistakable signature of stone formed over millennia, not a substance cast in a mold. The geological evidence is clear and consistent. These are carved monoliths, not cast ones. Perhaps the most plausible alternatives are still mechanical, but of a scale we have simply failed to document. What if Roman engineers, for this one supremely important project, constructed mega machines that were never recorded? Imagine cranes of unprecedented size, leveraging systems of counterweights and capstans powered not by a dozen men, but by hundreds. Envision windlasses, those simple winches used for raising anchors, but built to a colossal specification, with timber beams as thick as tree trunks and ropes as thick as a man's thigh. Such devices would represent the absolute peak of pre-industrial engineering, so specialized and expensive that they were used only for the empire's most symbolic projects and then perhaps dismantled, their knowledge dying with the master engineers who conceived them. While we have no blueprints for such machines, their possibility lies in the gap between what we know Romans could do and what they demonstrably did at Baalbek. These theories, from the mystical to the mechanical, serve a crucial purpose beyond mere speculation. They highlight the profound and enduring allure of the site. Baalbek challenges not just our understanding of history, but our very perception of ancient capability. When a puzzle resists every standard solution, it forces us to re-examine our assumptions about the past. It opens a door to wonder, to the possibility that history's ledger is incomplete, that fragments of knowledge, of technique, of sheer cleverness have been lost in the long silence between then and now. The stones do not yield their secret easily, and perhaps that is exactly why they continue to hold us in their thrall. They are a permanent question mark carved in limestone, inviting each new generation to look and to wonder how. Yet the story of Baalbek is not locked in the past. It is a living mystery under constant investigation. Modern archaeology has stepped away from speculation and into the realm of precise digital measurement. Teams now use tools like three-dimensional laser scanning to map every contour, every tool mark, and every imperfection of the stones with millimeter accuracy. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses deep into the earth, revealing hidden foundations and pathways without ever lifting a shovel. Engineers run sophisticated structural analyses on these digital models, simulating the stresses and forces involved in moving such massive loads. They have mapped the likely routes from the quarry, analyzing the subtle inclines and turns that would have dictated the path of those ancient processions. Each new scan is like adding another piece to a vast, incomplete puzzle. It provides hard data, but as often as it offers answers, it unveils deeper complexities. For example, these non-invasive surveys have detected evidence of older, massive stonework beneath the Roman podium. This startling discovery suggests that the Romans, masters of architectural appropriation, may not have been the first to conceive of building on such a titanic scale at this site. They could have arrived, seen the existing foundations of an even earlier culture, and chosen to build upon that legacy, literally and symbolically. This pushes the origins of the megalithic mystery back centuries, perhaps even millennia, before the first Roman legionary ever set foot in the Bekaa Valley. It transforms the narrative from a single moment of Roman genius into a layered story of successive civilizations, each drawn to the power of the place, each attempting to outdo what came before by moving ever larger stones. So the investigation continues, not to diminish the wonder, but to deepen our understanding of the long, human conversation with the impossible that these stones represent. Every new datum from a laser scanner is a whisper from the past, asking us to listen more closely. But what if the Romans were not the original architects of the impossible? There is a compelling and, to some, a revolutionary hypothesis gaining traction among researchers. It suggests that the massive podium itself, the very foundation holding the 800-ton stones, may not be Roman at all. Instead, it could be a relic from a far older world, a megalithic platform upon which the Romans simply built their magnificent temple. The clues lie in the stonework itself. Look closely at the Trilithon, at the sheer, unadorned scale of its blocks and the way they are fitted. Now compare it to the precise, ordered columns and carved friezes of the Roman temple that rises above it. The styles are strikingly different. The podium speaks a language of raw, overwhelming mass, while the temple speaks of refined proportion and decorative detail. This has led some scholars to propose a Phoenician origin, or even a Bronze Age one, dating back over 3,000 years. This is not a fringe idea, but a serious archaeological question born from observable evidence. If true, it completely rewires the historical circuit. It transfers the staggering mystery of moving those stones from the highly documented, engineering-rich Roman Empire to a shadowy, pre-literate civilization from the mists of the ancient Near East. Suddenly, the puzzle becomes exponentially more profound. We are no longer asking how a global superpower achieved this feat, but how a local, ancient culture possibly did it with even fewer of the technological advantages we attribute to Rome. This hypothesis does not diminish Roman achievement, it reframes it. It suggests the Romans, ever the pragmatic inheritors, arrived at a site already sanctified by a mind-bending monument. They saw the awesome power of these foundational stones and recognized their symbolic value, choosing to build their own temple atop this existing testament to divine or royal power. It was a brilliant political and spiritual maneuver, layering their own authority onto a pre-existing legend of impossible strength. This possibility opens a fascinating can of worms. Were the Romans merely the last custodians of a platform built by a forgotten culture possessing a lost understanding of mega-construction? The idea adds a profound layer of antiquity and intrigue, pushing the origins of Baalbek's greatest mystery back into a deeper, darker past, where the answers are even more elusive and the story becomes infinitely more compelling. The true power of these stones was never just in their weight, but in what that weight represented. To walk into the temple of Jupiter was to undergo a carefully orchestrated psychological experience. The visitor would first pass through a monumental gateway, then ascend a vast staircase, each step designed to elevate them physically and mentally. Finally, they would enter the sacred precinct and be confronted by the towering podium of the Trilithon. Those 800-ton blocks were not hidden in the foundation. They were displayed prominently, forming the very base upon which the gleaming marble columns of the temple soared toward the sky. This was a deliberate architectural choice. The message was visceral and immediate. Before you could even approach the statue of the god, you had to acknowledge the unmovable, incomprehensible strength of the empire that built his house. It was a statement of dominance, but not merely over other people. This was a declaration of supremacy over nature itself. By moving mountains, the builders demonstrated that the will of Rome and its gods could reshape the very earth. For the local population, whose older deities were tied to the landscape, this was a profound act of spiritual persuasion. The new temple did not quietly coexist with the old beliefs. It physically and symbolically overwhelmed them, asserting that Jupiter was now the supreme power in this ancient, sacred valley. The staggering effort of construction transformed the site itself. In many religious traditions, the value of a sacred space is magnified by the sacrifice and devotion required to create it. The years of labor, the immense cost, the sheer human endeavor, these were not just logistical expenses, they were offerings. Each inch the stone was dragged, each drop of sweat became part of the temple's consecration. The difficulty was the point, proving the depth of devotion through monumental toil. This shifts our perspective on the mystery. The choice to use monoliths instead of the smaller, more rational blocks seen in other Roman projects likely transcended practical engineering. It was a theological decision. A wall built of 1,000 small stones can be dismantled. A single block weighing 800 tons is eternal. It creates a foundation that feels as timeless and unshakable as divine authority itself, a permanent anchor for faith in a changing world. So when we ask how they moved these stones, we must also ask why they felt it was so essential to move stones of this specific, impossible scale. The answer lies at the intersection of stone and spirit, where raw engineering meets the human desire to build a heaven that will never fall. The mystery, therefore, is not just a puzzle of ancient physics, but a window into the mind of an empire that sought to make its beliefs as solid and everlasting as the mountains it commanded. Nature itself was a silent partner in this colossal endeavor. The very stone chosen for the Trilithon held a secret that made the impossible slightly more manageable. This limestone is what geologists call a nummulitic variety, filled with the fossilized remains of ancient marine organisms. Crucially, when first extracted from the moist, dark bed of the quarry, it is relatively soft and workable. It would have been far easier to cut and shape with bronze and iron tools in this state. Only after days or weeks of exposure to the sun and air would it undergo a process of desiccation and hardening, transforming into the incredibly durable stone we see today. This gave the builders a precious window of time, a period of malleability where they could refine the block's dimensions and smooth its surfaces before it set into its final, unyielding form. It was a race against the very chemistry of the material, a clever exploitation of a natural property hidden within the mountain. The path from quarry to temple also reveals a landscape engineered by time to aid their task. The route is not flat, but it is a consistent, gentle downward slope. While still an immense challenge, this natural incline meant gravity was in a small way on their side. Dragging an 800-ton block downhill, even slightly, reduces the required pulling force compared to moving it across level ground or, unthinkably, uphill. They would have meticulously prepared this pathway, clearing obstructions and reinforcing the ground, but the foundational topography was a gift. It suggests the quarry site was not chosen at random, but selected with a master builder's eye for the path of least resistance across that final, critical kilometer. Even the calendar was a tool. The builders almost certainly planned their most intensive moving campaigns for the dry seasons of late spring or early autumn. The harsh winter brought rains that would turn the Bikar Valley into a sea of mud, making any prepared roadway a slippery, unstable nightmare. The peak summer heat, meanwhile, posed a severe risk to the thousands of workers and draft animals, threatening exhaustion and dehydration on a massive scale. By aligning their most grueling work with milder weather, they were not just ensuring comfort, they were ensuring the survival of the project itself. This reveals a profound sophistication in their planning. They were not brute forcing their way through the environment. They were listening to it, reading its rhythms, and adapting their monumental ambition to the realities of the land, the stone, and the sky. The mystery of Baalbek, then, is not just a story of human will versus inert rock, but a story of a deep, intelligent collaboration with the natural world. The 800-ton stones of Baalbek were purchased with something far more fluid than labor. They were bought with the liquid wealth of an empire. To grasp the full scope of this undertaking, we must look beyond the quarry and the construction site to the ledgers and trade routes that made it all possible. Funding a project of this magnitude required a treasury of staggering depth, a reservoir of capital that could be tapped for a single, symbolic endeavor in a distant provincial capital. The money flowed from multiple, powerful sources: imperial treasuries filled with the accumulated tribute of conquered lands provided the direct investment. War spoils, the gold and silver stripped from defeated kingdoms, were often poured into monumental architecture as a permanent advertisement of Roman victory. And then there were the local taxes, the steady, relentless inflow from the farms, markets, and ports of the region itself, redirected from local coffers to fund a temple that would bind that very region more tightly to Rome. This economic context is the silent, often overlooked foundation of the entire mystery. The puzzle is not just one of physics and engineering, it is profoundly financial. Consider for a moment the sheer ongoing cost. This was not a one-time purchase of stone. It was the multi-year commitment to feed and house an army of workers, not for a season, but for what was likely a generation. It meant procuring mountains of food, endless supplies of fresh water, and durable clothing and tools. It required the purchase or harvesting of vast quantities of timber for the colossal sledges, the ramps, and the cranes, a demand that would have reshaped local forests. The procurement of ropes, lubricants, metal for tools, and housing materials created an entire temporary economy around the construction site. This speaks to a level of centralized economic power and logistical planning that was unique in the ancient world. The Roman Empire operated like a colossal machine, with trade networks stretching from Britain to India, and a bureaucracy efficient enough to collect taxes and redistribute resources on a continental scale. Baalbek, therefore, stands as a monument to Roman fiscal might as much as to its engineering genius. It is a testament to an empire's ability to not only imagine the impossible, but to financially and logistically sustain the decades-long effort to achieve it. The stones are silent on this matter, but their very existence shouts the economic truth that will alone cannot move mountains, but the organized wealth of a global superpower certainly could. But the story of Baalbek did not end with the last Roman engineer. As the empire's power waned, the great temple complex entered a long, slow twilight, and the stones began a new chapter in the human imagination. The colossal blocks, now standing as silent ruins, no longer spoke of Jupiter or imperial glory. Instead, they became a blank slate, a monumental riddle that invited new stories from every culture that encountered them. In the medieval Islamic world, Arab historians and travelers gazed upon the ruins with a mix of awe and scholarly curiosity. They documented the site with meticulous care, but faced with stones of such impossible scale, their explanations often reached beyond recorded history into the realm of sacred legend. Many attributed the construction to the prophet Suleiman, known in the Bible as King Solomon, who was believed to command not just wisdom, but also the obedience of jinn, powerful spirits of fire and air. In this telling, the stones were not moved by armies of men, but by supernatural beings under a prophet's command. Other local folklore spoke of a race of ancient giants, titanic beings from a primordial age who alone could have wrestled such mountains into place. These were not seen as mere fairy tales, but as serious attempts to reconcile the physical evidence with a worldview that placed divine and superhuman events firmly within history. The stones were so far outside ordinary human experience that they demanded an extraordinary explanation. This transformation is deeply revealing. It shows how the mystery of Baalbek transcended its original Roman context completely. The stones ceased to be a political statement and became instead a fixture of the landscape's soul, a permanent source of wonder that each new generation sought to explain through the lens of their own beliefs and mythologies. The void left by forgotten history was naturally filled with stories that gave meaning to the incomprehensible, weaving Baalbek into a rich, living tapestry of local identity and legend that had little to do with its actual builders. This process of reinterpretation took a starkly practical turn under the Ottoman Empire centuries later. When Ottoman forces arrived, they saw the site not as a temple to a foreign god, nor as the work of giants, but as a formidable strategic asset. The massive pre-cut stones of the ruined temples presented a ready-made fortress. They systematically repurposed the ancient masonry, incorporating the colossal blocks into thick defensive walls and fortifications. Towers were built atop the Roman foundations, and the grand courtyards became military encampments. In a very literal sense, the stones were given a new purpose, their symbolic weight converted into physical security. This pragmatic reuse is a fascinating counterpoint to the medieval myths, where scholars saw a puzzle for the intellect and storytellers saw a canvas for the divine. The Ottoman military engineers saw raw material. Yet even this utilitarian approach speaks to the enduring power of the site. Its very indestructibility made it valuable. The stones were so immovably solid that they became the perfect foundation for a different kind of power, the power of a garrison rather than a priesthood. This layered history, from sacred precinct to fortified stronghold, demonstrates how the meaning of a place is never fixed. It evolves with the needs and narratives of those who inherit it. The 800-ton blocks, silent and unchanging, watched as civilizations rose and fell around them, each projecting their own fears, faiths, and practical necessities onto these immutable giants. The mystery, therefore, is not just about how they were built, but about how they were continually rebuilt in the human mind, serving as an eternal mirror for our changing understanding of the world and our place within it. That enduring legacy of ingenuity echoes through the centuries, right into our modern world of steel and silicon. The colossal stones of Baalbek do not just belong to the past, they actively speak to the present, challenging and inspiring today's architects and engineers. When contemporary teams face the daunting task of moving a 2,000-ton space shuttle or a 10,000-ton bridge section, they are engaging in a dialogue with those ancient builders, wrestling with the same fundamental physics of weight, friction, and control. The solutions may look different, employing hydraulic jacks and computerized sensors instead of wooden sledges and greased tracks, but the core principles remain eerily familiar. It is still about distributing immense weight across a stable platform, about moving with excruciating slowness to maintain precision, and about orchestrating a complex ballet of coordinated force. In that sense, the master builders of the temple would conceptually understand the mission, if not the machinery. Studying Baalbek forces modern problem solvers to strip away assumptions about technology and think in first principles. It asks a humbling question: what could you achieve if your most advanced tools were taken away, leaving only fundamental physics, basic materials, and human creativity? This perspective fuels innovation in surprising areas, from disaster relief in resource-poor regions to sustainable construction techniques that minimize energy use. The site serves as a timeless benchmark, a reminder that technological sophistication is not the only path to monumental achievement. Our ancestors reached staggering heights through something else entirely: maximal organization and sheer collective will. They offer profound lessons in project management that transcend eras, demonstrating how to sustain a vision across decades, how to motivate and coordinate thousands of individuals toward a single, seemingly impossible goal, and how to solve problems not with a new gadget, but with a new way of thinking. In an age of rapid technological obsolescence, the silent, steadfast stones of Baalbek teach a different kind of progress, one measured not in processing power, but in perseverance, in the enduring human capacity to look at a mountain and see not an obstacle, but the foundation for a dream. The silent stones of Baalbek have found a powerful voice in our modern culture. They appear not just in academic journals, but in the pages of best-selling novels, the frames of popular documentaries, and the digital landscapes of blockbuster video games. Often, they are placed at the center of speculative narratives about ancient astronauts or advanced lost civilizations. While this type of coverage frequently leans toward dramatic storytelling over sober fact, it has played an undeniable role. It has kept the name Baalbek in the public consciousness for generations, ensuring that a complex archaeological site in Lebanon remains a topic of global conversation. This cultural footprint is far from trivial. It demonstrates how a single, stubborn historical mystery can ignite the imagination of millions, creating a vital bridge between the meticulous world of academic archaeology and the wide-eyed wonder of public curiosity. The stones have transcended their original purpose to become universal icons of the unknown. They represent something deeper than a construction puzzle. They symbolize humanity's collective itch to understand the outer edges of our own history. When a documentary poses a provocative question about the stones, or a game designer uses their image to evoke a sense of ancient mystery, they are tapping into that fundamental human drive. We look at these monoliths and we do not just see cut rock, we see a question mark carved in limestone. This popular fascination, for all its occasional sensationalism, performs a crucial service. It generates the interest and the audience that, in turn, helps fund and justify continued scientific investigation. The debates sparked by a television show can lead viewers to seek out more rigorous sources, creating a cycle where speculation fuels a demand for scholarship. In this way, the cultural echo of Baalbek ensures that the stones are never forgotten, that each new generation of engineers, historians, and dreamers feels compelled to look at them anew and ask how. That enduring question, kept alive by both scholars and storytellers, is perhaps the greatest legacy of the builders themselves. They created not just a temple, but a perpetual enigma, a monument that continues to challenge what we think we know about our past and our potential. The weight of the stones is immense, but it is not a weight that crushes human ingenuity. A persistent myth suggests that because these blocks are so heavy, they must be the work of beings from beyond our world. This idea, while capturing the imagination, overlooks a fundamental truth. It dismisses the vast, documented tapestry of human achievement that stretches across millennia. Our history is filled with monuments that seemed impossible to those who came later, from the pyramids to the cathedrals, each one a testament to what people can accomplish with time, organization, and relentless problem-solving. To attribute Baalbek to extraterrestrials is not just a leap, it is a disservice. It robs the unnamed engineers and laborers of their legacy, framing their monumental work as something beyond human capacity, when the evidence suggests it represents the absolute peak of that capacity. Another common misconception involves the very substance of the stones. Some propose they are not natural limestone at all, but a form of ancient, advanced concrete poured into place. This theory elegantly sidesteps the transportation problem, but it clashes directly with the physical evidence. Geologists have studied the Trilithon blocks extensively. The stone exhibits consistent bedding planes and fossil patterns that flow uninterrupted across each entire monolith. These are the unmistakable fingerprints of sedimentary rock formed over eons at the bottom of an ancient sea, not a material mixed and cast in a mold. The analysis is clear and repeatable. The stones are cut from the local mountain, not concocted in a builder's yard. Then there are the more speculative ideas, like the use of anti-gravity devices or acoustic levitation. These concepts belong to the realm of theoretical possibility and science fiction, a space of wonder that, so far, lacks any anchor in the archaeological record at Baalbek or anywhere else in the ancient world. No tool, no inscription, no contemporary account even hints at such technology. This does not mean we close the door on mystery, but we must distinguish between grounded hypothesis and unfettered speculation. The former builds on evidence, the latter often replaces it. Addressing these myths is crucial, but it is not an attempt to drain the wonder from the site. Quite the opposite, by clearing away the fog of unsupported claims, we bring the genuine human achievement into sharper, more brilliant focus. The real story is not less impressive because it was done by people, it is infinitely more so. It forces us to confront the profound capabilities of our ancestors, their mastery of logistics, their understanding of materials, and their sheer collective will. When we ground the discussion in the tangible evidence, the stones of Baalbek stop being artifacts of a forgotten magic and become something far more powerful. They become monuments to the enduring, problem-solving human spirit. The truth in this case is not a simpler story, it is a deeper and more inspiring one. The abandoned monolith in the quarry is a crime scene frozen in time. Here, on the surface of the stone of the pregnant woman, we find the forensic evidence of a process interrupted. The tool marks are not random scars, they are a deliberate language of construction. You can see the precise parallel grooves left by metal chisels, defining the block's edges with astonishing straightness. In other areas, there are wider, deeper channels, likely where workers hammered in wooden wedges. They would soak these wedges with water, and as the wood expanded, it would create immense pressure, gradually and cleanly splitting the limestone along a predetermined plane. This combination of tools shows a sophisticated, multi-stage approach to liberation, first defining the shape with chisels, then using the brute force of expanding wood to finally separate the giant from the living rock of the mountain. But the most telling clues are the features prepared for the next step. Carved into the top of the block are several robust, rounded protrusions known as lifting bosses. These were not decorative, they were critical load-bearing points. Ropes would be looped around them, likely protected by wooden sleeves to prevent fraying, to provide anchor points for the initial heave. Beside the block, workers had also cut clear access channels in the bedrock, spaces designed to allow them to get underneath the monolith once it was free. This was the plan: to lever it up, to slide rollers or a sledge beneath it, and to begin the epic journey. Every mark is part of a clear, logical sequence, a recipe for moving a mountain that we can read like an instruction manual. By studying this frozen moment, archaeologists can reverse engineer the entire intended method. It appears the builders planned a delicate ballet of leverage. After undercutting the block, they would have inserted massive wooden levers into those side channels. Teams of men, perhaps using smaller stones as fulcrums, would then begin to rock the giant back and forth, each tiny lift allowing them to pack more timber beneath it, raising it incrementally until it was high enough to pivot onto its waiting transport system. The sophistication is breathtaking, a testament to a deep, practical understanding of physics, yet this carefully planned operation was never completed. The block was cut, prepared, and then simply left. Its abandonment is a mystery nested inside the larger one. Was it a flaw discovered deep within the stone, a hidden crack that made the risk of transport too great? Could a sudden political shift have redirected funds and workers to a more urgent project, leaving this giant as a monument to changing imperial priorities? Or did the master builders, after all their preparation, finally stand back and confront a sobering truth that moving a stone of 1,000 tons was a logistical threshold they simply could not cross? This solitary stone holds no answers, only the silent echo of a decision made 2,000 years ago. It represents the precise point where soaring ambition met the unyielding reality of the physical world, a permanent testament to the line between what was dreamed and what was done. Sound itself may have been the most elegant tool they never left behind. Among the more esoteric theories proposed for Baalbek is the idea that the builders harnessed acoustic properties, using specific resonant frequencies to somehow lighten their colossal loads. This notion springs from a scattering of historical anecdotes and legends from around the world. Tibetan monks, for instance, have oral traditions that speak of using trumpets and drums to levitate stones during temple construction. In the accounts of early Spanish explorers in the Americas, there are curious mentions of Inca builders moving massive blocks with the aid of sound. While these stories are often relegated to the realm of folklore, they share a common thread: the suggestion that vibration could alter the relationship between a heavy object and the earth beneath it. At its core, the physics is not entirely outlandish. We know today that sound is a pressure wave, a physical force that can cause materials to resonate. In controlled laboratory settings, scientists have used sound waves to suspend small objects in mid-air, a process called acoustic levitation. The principle involves creating a standing wave, a precise pattern of pressure, nodes where the force of the sound counteracts the force of gravity. Scaling this phenomenon up from a tiny droplet in a lab to an 800-ton limestone block is a leap of cosmic proportions. requiring an unimaginable source of power and control. There is no archaeological evidence at Baalbek, no ancient tuning fork or resonant chamber inscription to support the practical application of such a technique. Yet the site itself whispers with intriguing acoustic properties. The vast enclosed spaces of the temple courtyards and the massive stone walls create remarkable echoes and sound reflections. A single clap can reverberate for seconds. A deep chant could fill the entire space with a palpable vibration. This leads to a fascinating, if speculative, line of thought. Could the builders have used rhythmic chanting, the synchronized striking of tuned stones, or the blast of large horns not to levitate the blocks, but to achieve a more subtle effect? Perhaps the goal was not anti-gravity, but reduced friction. A precisely applied vibrational frequency might have caused the stone to vibrate minutely, effectively fluidizing the contact point between the sledge and the wooden track, making it slide more easily. Think of how a car stuck in mud can sometimes be rocked free by rhythmically pushing it back and forth, the vibration breaking the suction. Now imagine that principle applied with intentional, orchestrated sound on a monumental scale. While this remains a hypothesis far from the mainstream, its value lies not in proof but in perspective. It challenges us to expand our definition of an ancient tool. We readily accept the lever, the ramp, and the pulley as valid technologies because we can see and hold them. But what if their toolkit also included an intimate, empirical knowledge of phenomena we are only now quantifying with modern science? Principles of resonance and wave mechanics that were understood not through equations, but through generations of practiced observation and oral tradition. The silence of the stones may not be empty, but filled with the faded echo of a forgotten science. The sheer discipline required to move an 800-ton stone finds its closest parallel not in a quarry, but on a battlefield. The Roman legion was far more than a fighting force. It was the ancient world's most sophisticated mobile engineering and logistics corporation. Every soldier carried not just a sword and shield, but also a pickaxe, a saw, and a shovel. At the end of a day's march, a legion was expected to construct a fortified camp with ditches, ramparts, and a wooden palisade, a task completed with a speed and precision that still astonishes military historians. This was an army that built as instinctively as it fought, turning raw landscapes into organized, functional infrastructure under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Their supply chains were marvels of pre-industrial planning, capable of delivering food, tools, and materials across thousands of miles to sustain campaigns that could last for years. This military machine operated on principles of absolute hierarchy, standardized procedure, and relentless repetition. Now, apply that same organizational blueprint to the slopes of the Bekaa Valley. The mystery of the stones begins to shift from a question of supernatural aid to one of supreme logistical execution. Imagine the site not just as a construction project, but as a prolonged, peaceful military campaign. Its objective was not the conquest of a city, but the subjugation of a mountain. The legions provided the perfect template, a ready-made workforce of thousands, already trained to follow complex orders without question, to work in coordinated units, and to endure grueling physical labor as a matter of daily routine. These were men conditioned to move in unison, to pull on a command, to build and dismantle complex wooden structures. The rhythmic, synchronized hauling of a giant stone sledge would have been second nature to a century of soldiers used to rowing warships or moving siege engines. The army's own engineers, the men who designed siege towers and floating bridges, would have been the masterminds behind the transport routes and lifting mechanisms. Their genius lay in applied physics, solving immense practical problems with the materials at hand. Most critically, the military's legendary supply apparatus could have been seamlessly redirected. The same networks that provisioned a legion on the Rhine frontier with grain from Egypt and leather from Spain could have been tasked with supplying the Baalbek site, ensuring a constant flow of timber, rope, metal, and food to fuel the decades-long endeavor. This perspective reframes the entire mystery. The temple's construction becomes the ultimate demonstration of Roman organizational power, scaled up to a previously unimaginable degree for a permanent, peaceful monument. It was a campaign where the enemy was gravity, the terrain was the challenge, and victory was measured in millimeters of perfectly fitted stone. The real secret weapon was not a lost technology, but a perfectly honed system of human coordination, one that transformed the chaotic potential of thousands of individuals into a single, irresistible force. When you view those stones through this lens, their movement seems less like magic and more like the inevitable outcome of the most formidable administrative machine the ancient world had ever produced. This final, perfect placement of the stones could have been preceded by a history of failure. The first attempts to move an 800-ton block likely did not end with a gentle slide into place. They may have ended with the sickening crack of overloaded timber, a sledge shattering under a weight it was never meant to bear. They may have seen ropes thick as a man's arm snap with a whip crack that echoed across the valley, sending teams stumbling backward. Or perhaps a carefully prepared earthen ramp, stressed beyond its limit, simply collapsed inward, burying the monolith in a landslide of soil and rubble. Each of these potential disasters would have been more than a setback. They would have been a profound and costly lesson written in broken materials and, tragically, in human loss. The successful movement of the Trilithon stones, then, might not represent the first attempt, but the final, perfected iteration. It could be the culmination of a brutal, unrecorded curriculum in mega-scale logistics, where each failure taught the master builders something new about the limits of their materials, the precise angle of a ramp, the optimal consistency of a lubricant, or the exact rhythm needed for 1,000 men to pull as one. This process of trial and error is the silent, unglamorous engine of all human engineering. We rarely see the prototypes that collapsed, the designs that failed, the early models that proved a concept was possible but impractical. History celebrates the finished product, the triumphant proof that it could be done. At Baalbek, we are looking at that triumph, but the absence of any written manual or engineering scroll from the site suggests something profound. The knowledge needed to achieve this was not held in a library. It was held in the muscles and memories of the workforce. It was a living, breathing expertise, passed in shouts and hand signals from foreman to team, refined through the sheer, repetitive act of doing. The master builder knew that to pivot the stone at the quarry's edge, they needed to place the levers here, not there, because the last time they placed them there, the wood had splintered. The rope master knew exactly how many strands to weave and how to treat the fibers, because he had seen what happened when a lesser rope failed under strain. This was a cumulative, experiential knowledge base developed painfully and expensively on site through observation and adaptation, and this may be the deepest layer of the mystery. When the last stone was set and the temple consecrated, that specific, hard-won expertise had no further purpose. There was no other project in the empire calling for the movement of 800-ton blocks. The specialized teams disbanded, the unique tools were repurposed or rotted away, and the intricate, step-by-step understanding of how to perform this specific miracle faded. It was not stolen by time or catastrophe, it was simply made obsolete by its own success. The builders solved a problem so completely, for a goal so singular, that the solution itself vanished when the work was done. The stones remain not as a blueprint, but as a monument to a knowledge that was as monumental and as temporary as the effort that created it. The most plausible answers lie at the crossroads of many minds. To solve a puzzle this ancient and complex, you cannot rely on a single perspective. modern understanding of Baalbek is a tapestry woven from threads pulled from half a dozen different fields of study, each one offering a crucial piece of the picture. An archaeologist carefully brushes dust from a pottery shard, dating the occupation layer beside the quarry road. A materials scientist places a tiny sample of the limestone under a microscope, analyzing its crystalline structure to understand how it behaves under stress. A mechanical engineer sits at a computer, running digital simulations to model the forces on a wooden sledge carrying 800 tons. Meanwhile, a historian pores over fragmented papyri and faded inscriptions, searching for any administrative note, any record of a specialized work crew or an extraordinary shipment of timber. This is not a competition between disciplines, but a necessary collaboration. The original project was itself a symphony of diverse skills, from quarrymen and carpenters to logisticians and priests, so it makes sense that deciphering it requires a similarly orchestrated effort. The true breakthrough happens in the conversation between these experts. The physicist's calculation of the exact friction coefficient for limestone on greased wood gives the engineer a critical variable for her model. That model, in turn, shows the historian just how many men would have been needed on the ropes, which might lead her to look for records of a temporary census or a massive grain requisition for that specific region and time. A single field working alone sees only a sliver of the truth. Archaeology can tell us when and where, but not precisely how. Engineering can tell us how it might have been done, but not why they chose this method over another. History can suggest the why, but often lacks the technical specifics. It is only when these voices speak together that a coherent, testable narrative begins to form. This interdisciplinary approach mirrors the nature of the mystery itself, a multifaceted enigma that demands we think not just as detectives, but as a whole team of them, each bringing a different lens to examine the same enduring stones. The legacy of those ancient engineers now rests in our hands. Baalbek today is a place of profound duality, celebrated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its universal value, yet constantly navigating a fragile line between preservation and peril. The very air that surrounds the stones carries a modern threat, as environmental pollution from nearby urban centers slowly, invisibly wears away at the limestone surfaces that have endured for millennia. This is a battle fought on a microscopic scale, where acid rain and particulate matter etch their own modern inscriptions onto the ancient stone, a gradual erosion that no amount of human strength can simply push back. Political instability in the region adds another layer of vulnerability, complicating long-term conservation planning and access for international experts, making the steady, careful work of preservation a logistical challenge in its own right. Perhaps the most immediate pressure comes from the site's own fame, the footsteps of thousands of visitors each year whose collective presence, however well-intentioned, stresses ancient pavements and alters the delicate microclimate around the ruins. The conservation teams working here face a puzzle as complex as the original construction. They must balance the public's right to access and experience this wonder with the absolute necessity of protecting it for future generations. This involves meticulous, often invisible work, monitoring cracks with laser precision, stabilizing fragile sections with minimal intervention, and carefully managing visitor flow to prevent cumulative damage. Every decision is a calculation, an attempt to freeze time for a monument that has always been in conversation with it. In a very real sense, we have become the latest chapter in the story of Baalbek. The ancient builders moved mountains to create a testament to their beliefs, and now we are tasked with the equally demanding work of stewardship, of ensuring their question carved in stone does not fade before we can find an answer. Our modern cranes and chemical consolidants are the tools of this era, just as sledges and ropes were the tools of theirs. This ongoing struggle connects us directly across the centuries. We are now the custodians of a mystery we still do not fully understand, protecting not just a collection of ruins, but a permanent invitation to wonder. The effort to preserve Baalbek is no longer just about archaeology. It is a commitment to maintaining a dialogue with the past, ensuring that these silent, towering questions remain standing for every generation that dares to ask how. The enduring power of these stones is not measured in tons, but in the questions they plant in our minds. They tap into something fundamental within us, a deep psychological need to stand before the truly awesome and feel a mixture of humility and curiosity. Baalbek represents a limit case, a boundary marker for what we believe ancient people could achieve. In a world where we are accustomed to technological solutions for every problem, these blocks present a stark and silent challenge to our assumption of linear progress. They whisper that our ancestors, armed with what we might consider primitive tools, could orchestrate feats that still give our modern engineers pause. This unresolved quality is the very heart of the mystery's longevity. A puzzle with a neat, final answer is satisfying, but it is filed away. A puzzle that remains open, that resists every attempt at a definitive solution, becomes a living thing. It invites participation, fueling endless cycles of debate, research, and speculation. It creates a space where imagination is not just allowed but required. We are drawn to fill the gaps in the historical record with our own theories, our own stories, because the void of not knowing is more compelling than a simple, settled fact. This process satisfies a profound curiosity about human potential. The stones ask us if they could do this, what else might they have been capable of that we have simply forgotten? They suggest that the story of human ingenuity is not a straight line from simple to complex, but a tapestry with threads of brilliance that appear, fade, and sometimes reappear centuries later. They are a permanent reminder that our understanding of the past is always provisional, that there may be entire chapters of our shared history that are still unwritten, or worse, fundamentally misunderstood. This psychological hook is incredibly powerful. It transforms a static archaeological site into a dynamic conversation across time. It engages more than our intellect, it speaks to our sense of wonder. When we look at the Trilithon, we are not just analyzing a construction method, we are confronting the shadow of the people who built it. We are trying to connect with their ambition, to understand the scale of their vision, and to measure our own capabilities against theirs. The stones become a mirror, reflecting our own desire to achieve the extraordinary and to leave a mark that will baffle and inspire those who come after us. In the end, Baalbek endures because it is more than a mystery of engineering. It is a question about ourselves. It asks how we define progress, how we honor our ancestors, and how much we are still willing to believe is possible when will and ingenuity converge. The silence of the stones is not an emptiness, but an invitation to keep wondering, to keep searching, and to never assume that we have heard the last word from the past. These theoretical debates find their ultimate test in the physical world. To truly understand the scale of the problem, modern researchers have moved beyond dusty manuscripts and into the dust and strain of the field itself. In recent decades, historical engineers and archaeologists have organized ambitious reconstruction projects. Their goal is not to build a new temple, but to answer a single, burning question: could it actually be done? They gather teams of volunteers, source timber and hemp rope made to ancient specifications, and set their sights on moving a multi-ton stone block using nothing but the presumed tools of the time. The process is a humbling education in reality. Every step, from carving the initial channels around the stone to the first tentative pull on the ropes, reveals hidden complexities. The wood groans under stresses it was never designed to bear in our modern world. The ropes, thick as a man's wrist, stretch and creak with a sound that speaks of imminent failure. Coordinating even 50 people to pull in perfect unison becomes a monumental challenge of communication and rhythm. These experiments are triumphs of perseverance, often succeeding in moving blocks of 5, 10, or even 20 tons over carefully prepared tracks. Yet, the very success of these small-scale trials casts the shadow of Baalbek into even sharper, more daunting relief. Moving a 10-ton block with a crew of 50 using period methods is a week-long endeavor requiring meticulous planning and immense effort. The physical and logistical leap from moving 10 tons to moving 800 tons is not linear, it is exponential. It is the difference between pushing a car and pushing a skyscraper. The reconstruction teams gain a profound, sweat-soaked respect for the ancient builders because their hands-on work reveals the 1,000 tiny things that can go wrong, the friction point no one predicted, the knot that slips, the timber that splinters. This tangible experience translates abstract theories into the language of aching muscles and snapped hemp, proving that every hypothesis about levers, sledges, and ramps must survive the brutal courtroom of physical reality. When the physical limits of manpower and material are reached, the investigation moves into a digital realm of pure calculation. Here, engineers use sophisticated computer simulations to conduct unlimited virtual trials. They can model an 800-ton limestone block with perfect precision. They assign material properties to virtual wood and rope, factoring in ancient tensile strengths and friction coefficients. Then they run the experiment 1,000 times. They simulate the force distribution across a giant wooden sledge as it begins to move. They visualize the stress points along a rope the size of a tree trunk, identifying exactly where it would fray and snap under tension. They test the angle of an earthen ramp, calculating precisely when the weight of the stone would cause the slope to collapse inward. These digital models are powerful because they allow for failure without cost. A virtual rope can snap 100 times, revealing the exact threshold of its endurance, guiding researchers toward a configuration that might have actually worked. The simulations can test ideas that would be far too dangerous or expensive to attempt in the real world, like the effect of flooding a temporary canal or the dynamics of a counterweight system of colossal scale. Yet, for all their power, the simulations possess a crucial limitation. They operate on the data and assumptions we feed into them. They can show us what was mechanically possible given certain parameters, but they cannot tell us what the ancient foreman knew in his gut. What empirical trick was passed down through generations of stonemasons? What seasonal nuance of the wood or the clay made the difference between success and catastrophic failure? The computer model is a map, but the physical reconstruction is the territory. One shows the theory, the other teaches the feel. Together, these twin approaches of physical reconstruction and digital simulation form the most rigorous toolkit we have for interrogating the past. They act as a necessary dialogue between the possible and the practical. A computer model might suggest that a team of 1,000 men could theoretically generate enough pulling force. A physical experiment with 100 men then reveals the immense difficulty of coordinating that many people on ropes without chaos, suggesting the need for smaller, managed teams working in relays. The hands-on attempt uncovers a problem, the simulation helps refine a solution, and the cycle continues. This iterative process slowly winnows the field of possibilities. It pushes grandiose but implausible ideas to the sidelines, while elevating simpler, more robust methods that could have withstood the unpredictable realities of a 2,000-year-old construction site. These modern investigations do not seek to diminish the mystery with a cold, final answer. Instead, they deepen our appreciation for its complexity. They transform the stones from passive puzzles into active partners in a grand experiment across time. We are not just asking how they were moved, we are trying to move something ourselves, to bridge the gap between our modern minds and the silent, formidable intellect of the builders. Each strained rope in a reconstruction, each stress calculation in a simulation, is a form of conversation, a way of listening to the echoes of ingenuity that still resonate within those 800-ton blocks. Their names are the great silence at the heart of the roaring achievement. We can speak of Roman emperors, of imperial treasuries and grand strategic visions, but the individuals who conceived the precise geometry, who solved the daily crises of weight and balance, who shouted the rhythm to 1,000 straining men, are ghosts. They worked under the patronage of Rome, yet their personal identities, their stories of breakthrough and setback, have vanished into time. This anonymity is not an absence but a profound presence. It adds a layer of haunting humanity to the cold stone, a reminder that every perfect joint was set by a hand we can no longer name. We possess the monument, but we are forever denied the memoirs. We see the result of genius, but not the face of the genius. This loss forces our focus away from singular heroes and toward the collective human spirit that built this place. The legacy of the builders is not a list of names on a plaque. It is the enduring echo of their combined effort. It is the intelligence in the quarry's angle of extraction, the patience in the millimeter-perfect fit, the sheer will in every inch the stone was dragged. They poured their skill and their sweat into creating something meant to defy time itself, and in that they succeeded brilliantly. Yet time, in its irony, took their identities as the price. Their ultimate creation, therefore, is not just a temple to Jupiter, but the mystery that surrounds it. They built an everlasting question. The stones stand as a permanent testament to what people can do when they work together toward an impossible goal. A message sent deliberately across the centuries, signed only with the collective signature of a vanished society. We are left to wonder about the master architect who first sketched that podium on parchment, staring at the lines and daring to think in scales of 800 tons. Did he sleep the night the first block was to be moved, or did anxiety and excitement keep him awake? We can ponder the lead foreman, his voice gone hoarse from weeks of command, who finally witnessed that colossal block settle into its cradle with a deep, gratifying thud of finality. We can consider the youngest laborer feeling the rough hemp of the rope burn his palms, looking up at the mountain of stone he was helping to move and feeling, perhaps for the first time, that he was part of something larger than his own life. Their personal stories are gone, but their shared story is written in the landscape. This anonymity, rather than diminishing them, universalizes them. They become every person who has ever labored to create something lasting, who has contributed their fragment of effort to a grand design whose full shape they might never see. In forgetting their names, we remember their humanity more clearly. The temple is their biography, written not in words but in weight and space. And so, the greatest legacy of these unknown builders is the curiosity they ignited. They crafted a puzzle so compelling that 2,000 years later, we are still trying to meet them halfway, to piece together their methods in order to honor their minds. We dig through the soil not just for artifacts, but for a connection to those anonymous thousands. In striving to solve how they did it, we are, in a way, reaching back through time to shake their hands and say, "We see what you did," and it leaves us in awe. The mystery is their final, magnificent gift, a perpetual invitation to remember that history is built not only by the famous, but by the forgotten, whose collective effort can move mountains and leave echoes that never fade. Long after the last legion departed, the stones began a second life in the realm of imagination. Their silent, imposing presence proved irresistible to artists, writers, and poets, who found in these limestone giants a perfect canvas for their own era's dreams and doubts. In the 19th century, as intrepid travelers from Europe ventured into the Ottoman Empire, Baalbek became a required stop on the grand tour of antiquity. These explorers returned with more than sketches. They brought back stories that transformed the ruins from a local wonder into a global icon. Their published travelogues were filled with lavish illustrations, detailed engravings that attempted to capture the sublime scale of the Trilithon, often with tiny human figures sketched at its base to emphasize the crushing, awe-inspiring proportions. These images did something critical. They translated a distant, physical place into a shared cultural idea, planting the seeds of its mystery in the minds of an audience who would never cross the sea to see it for themselves. Painters took up the challenge next, confronting the same problem the original engineers faced: how to convey sheer, unimaginable weight on a flat canvas. Their works often played with dramatic contrasts of light and shadow, using the long, deep shadows of late afternoon to carve dimensionality into the stones, making them feel both solid and strangely ethereal. The human element in these paintings is telling, sometimes showing local Bedouin tribesmen resting in the ruins, their temporary camps highlighting the eternal, unchanging nature of the stone around them. This artistic choice reinforced a romantic notion of the East as a land of timeless mystery, where modern life played out against the backdrop of a grander, forgotten past. The stones were no longer just Roman, they became universal symbols of antiquity itself, silent witnesses to the rise and fall of all empires. Poets and writers, armed with metaphor rather than brushstrokes, found a different kind of truth in the ruins. For them, the 800-ton blocks became powerful symbols. They represented the insurmountable obstacles faced by human ambition, the sheer weight of history pressing down on the present. In other verses, they transformed into metaphors for eternal questions, as permanent and unyielding as the riddles of existence. A poet might look upon the abandoned stone of the pregnant woman and see not a construction error, but a poignant symbol of aspirations left unfinished, of dreams that were too vast even for the giants who dreamed them. This literary adoption ensured the stones lived in the cultural bloodstream, their meaning constantly renewed by each generation that sought to understand the human condition through the lens of the ancient and the immense. This artistic legacy is far from superficial decoration. It actively shapes how we perceive Baalbek today. The romanticized, sublime image passed down through paintings and poetry primes us to feel a specific kind of awe when we see a photograph or visit the site ourselves. We have been taught through centuries of cultural transmission to see these stones not just as construction materials, but as characters in a story much larger than archaeology. They become the ultimate underdog tale, where humanity itself is the hero struggling against the brute force of nature. Each era projects its own anxieties onto this blank stone slate. The Victorians, enthralled by engineering and empire, saw a reflection of their own monumental ambitions. The modern world, with its fears of ecological limits and lost knowledge, might see a warning or a challenge. This continuous reinterpretation proves the mystery operates on a deeper frequency than mere logistics. It resonates on an aesthetic and philosophical plane, asking us not only how something was built, but what it means to build something that outlives your civilization's memory. The stones, through art, become a mirror. We do not just study them to uncover their past, we look at them to understand what we, in our own time, consider monumental, impossible, or divine. The chisel of the artist, in its own way, has done as much to shape our understanding as the chisel of the ancient mason, ensuring the question of Baalbek endures not just as a historical puzzle, but as a permanent feature of our cultural imagination. This reflection brings us to a quieter, more sobering layer of the mystery. The shadow cast by the 800-ton stones is long, and within it lies a question of human values. When we marvel at the engineering, we must also pause to consider the society that made such a choice possible. A civilization capable of moving mountains for a temple possessed a breathtaking ability to organize and direct human effort. The economic resources poured into Baalbek were astronomical, drawn from imperial treasuries, local taxes, and the spoils of distant wars. This wealth could have funded aqueducts for 100 cities, granaries for famine relief, or roads to connect remote communities. Instead, it was channeled into a single, staggering declaration of faith and power. This decision speaks volumes about the priorities of the age. In the Roman world, and indeed in many ancient societies, monumental religious architecture was not seen as a diversion from public welfare, but as its ultimate expression. A grand temple was believed to secure divine favor, which in turn promised stability, fertility, and protection for the entire state. The spiritual security of the community was considered the highest form of practical investment. Yet, this perspective does not erase the ethical tension we feel today. We look back and instinctively wonder about the individuals whose labor built this dream. The historical record is largely silent on their daily lives, but the scale of the project allows for a reasonable, if somber, inference. Such an endeavor almost certainly relied on forms of labor that would be unthinkable today. It may have involved enslaved individuals, prisoners of war, or conscripted local populations who had little choice in the matter. Even for free laborers, the conditions would have been grueling, the work dangerous, and the hours endless. The human cost, in terms of physical strain and lost years, was woven into the very fabric of the stones. To acknowledge this is not to dismiss the achievement, but to see it in its full, complex reality. It adds a necessary depth to our understanding, transforming the temple from a mere technical wonder into a profound document of its time. It tells a story of a society that placed immense value on collective symbols and divine order, a value that was expressed through the concerted effort of countless unnamed individuals. This ethical dimension is crucial because it reminds us that history is not just a record of what was built, but also of how it was built and for whom. Our modern admiration for the ingenuity must coexist with a clear-eyed recognition of the social structures that enabled it. This balanced view does not lessen the mystery, it enriches it. It asks us to hold two truths at once, to marvel at the height of human capability while also reflecting on the price that was often paid to reach it. The stones of Baalbek, in their silent permanence, bear witness to both the glory of creation and the weight of the effort it required. They challenge us to admire the masterpiece, but to never forget the many hands that shaped it. The next chapter in this story will be written not with chisels, but with algorithms and ground-penetrating radar. The mystery of the 800-ton stones is far from a relic of the past. It is a vibrant, active field of inquiry, with its most exciting discoveries likely still ahead of us. Future research is moving in several promising directions, each one a new key for an ancient lock. One of the most tantalizing goals is to find the lost cities of the builders themselves, the temporary worker camps that must have sprawled near the construction site. Discovering these would be an archaeological treasure trove. Imagine uncovering the remnants of their shelters, their cooking pits, their broken tools and discarded pottery. Such finds would tell us not about emperors but about the people. They could reveal diets, social organization, and even where these laborers came from, offering a human face to the monumental effort. To locate these ephemeral settlements, researchers are increasingly turning to non-invasive geophysical surveys. Techniques like ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography can map what lies beneath the soil without ever breaking the surface, creating a sonar image of hidden foundations, pathways, and post holes invisible to the naked eye. Another frontier is in the very substance of the stone itself. Advanced material analysis using spectrometry and microscopic examination can act like a forensic fingerprint. By analyzing the unique mineral signature of the Trilithon blocks and comparing it to different layers within the quarry, scientists could pinpoint the exact ledge each stone was cut from. This could reveal the quarrying sequence and even identify specific tool types by the microscopic marks they left behind, distinguishing between bronze and iron chisels or different styles of hammerstones. This work, however, cannot happen in isolation. The future of understanding Baalbek hinges on sustained international collaboration. The site's location in Lebanon places it at a crossroads of global scholarship, requiring the shared expertise of historians, engineers, geologists, and archaeologists from around the world. Each new technological advance offers a fresh lens. Artificial intelligence is now being trained to recognize patterns in thousands of tool marks, searching for consistencies that might reveal a standardized technique. More sophisticated engineering software can run increasingly accurate simulations, modeling the interplay of forces with variables we are only beginning to understand, like the exact moisture content of the wooden sledges or the seasonal consistency of the lubricants. This means the puzzle is not static. It evolves as our tools evolve. The silent stones are not giving up their secrets easily, but they are slowly being coaxed into a new kind of conversation. Every scan, every soil sample, every digital model is a sentence in that dialogue. The enduring enigma of Baalbek promises that the final word on these 800-ton giants has not been spoken, that the story of how they came to rest there is still being written, one high-tech discovery at a time. Perhaps the most satisfying explanation is not a single secret, but a grand synthesis of known methods pushed to their absolute limit. By weaving together the strongest threads of evidence, we can envision a plausible, step-by-step scenario for how the impossible might have been achieved. This reconstruction does not require lost super science, only the extreme amplification of Roman engineering, fueled by an empire's limitless ambition. It begins with strategic inheritance. The Romans arrived at a location already hallowed by centuries of worship. Recognizing its spiritual power, they chose to build their temple upon the existing foundations, both physical and symbolic, of a previous culture's sacred platform. This gave them a psychological and logistical head start. The quarry was their next masterstroke. They selected a site with ideal stone, a limestone that was workable when first extracted, and positioned it along a natural, gentle downward slope toward the construction site, letting gravity assist in the most minimal but crucial way. The workforce was the engine. Drawing on the organizational model of their own legions, they assembled a small city of laborers, stonemasons, and engineers. This was not a chaotic mob, but a hierarchically managed force, trained to follow complex orders and work in coordinated units. Their first monumental task was extraction. Using water-soaked wooden wedges and heavy iron tools, they painstakingly separated the 800-ton giants from the living bedrock. Once free, the real challenge began. The transport method likely centered on a colossal wooden sledge, a timber platform of unimaginable strength. This sledge was placed not on dirt, but on a carefully prepared roadway of parallel wooden rails, constantly lubricated with animal fat or wet clay to reduce friction. Pulling force was generated by a hybrid system. Teams of oxen provided steady, powerful traction, while teams of men operated large capstans, winding heavy ropes to create a mechanical advantage. Coordination would have been a symphony of shouted commands, with progress measured in mere feet per day. After the agonizingly slow journey from quarry to temple, the lifting phase commenced. Here, the builders turned to the ancient world's most reliable tool for elevation, the earthen ramp. They constructed a massive, gently sloping berm of packed earth, stone, and timber, rising from the ground to the top of the podium wall. Using the same sledge and rope system, they dragged the stone up this artificial mountain, an effort that might have taken months for a single block. Finally, with the stone perched at the correct height, came the delicate work. They would have carefully dismantled the ramp from around the block, using levers and hydraulic jacks made of wood and water to make microscopic adjustments, lowering the monolith with excruciating patience until it settled into its final millimeter-perfect position. This synthesis presents a picture of breathtaking scale and patience. It suggests the mystery of Baalbek is solved not by a single eureka, a moment, but by the relentless application of known principles on a previously unimaginable scale. It was a project that demanded not a magical tool, but a magical level of societal coordination, where the true innovation was not in the physics, but in the logistics of sustaining such a monumental dream for decades. The stones stand not as proof of a forgotten technology, but as a permanent monument to what human will can accomplish when every resource, every mind, and every muscle is aligned toward a single, staggering goal. The 800-ton stones do not whisper their secrets, they stand in a silence that speaks volumes. We have followed their journey from the dark embrace of the quarry to their eternal place in the temple wall, tracing the possible paths of sledges, ramps, and ropes. We have weighed the brilliant pragmatism of Roman engineering against the alluring pull of lost technologies and ancient legends. And we have listened for the echoes of the people, the unnamed thousands whose collective effort turned a mountain into a monument. In the end, we are left not with a single, satisfying answer, but with something perhaps more valuable, a profound appreciation for the mystery itself. The precise manual for moving these giants is gone, erased by the very passage of time the stones were built to defy. Yet their continued presence is the ultimate proof of success, a permanent challenge cast across the centuries. They ask us to measure our modern assumptions against their ancient reality, to remember that human potential is not defined solely by the tools in our hands, but by the vision in our minds and the will in our collective spirit. The pursuit of understanding, the decades of debate and discovery, enrich us far more than any quick solution ever could. This journey through the puzzle of Baalbek reminds us that history is not a flat, finished story, but a deep, layered conversation. The greatest monuments are not those that explain everything, but those that inspire us to keep asking, to keep looking deeper. They become mirrors, reflecting not only the ambition of those who built them, but our own enduring curiosity about who we are and what we, too, might be capable of achieving. The stones of the Temple of Jupiter, in their immovable silence, continue to do exactly what their builders intended. They make us stop, they make us look up, and they make us wonder. Your own perspective is a vital part of this ongoing conversation. What do you believe is the most plausible explanation for moving those 800-ton stones? Was it a triumph of Roman logistics, a forgotten local technique, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below, because every new idea helps us see this ancient puzzle from a different angle. If journeys into history's greatest enigmas captivate you, consider subscribing. Together, we can keep exploring the shadows of our past, uncovering stories of ingenuity that continue to shape our understanding of human potential. As we leave the silent stones of Baalbek behind, let their lesson linger. They are far more than a collection of ruins, they are a bridge stretching across 2,000 years, connecting our modern curiosity directly to the ambition of those who came before us. They urge us to keep questioning, to keep learning, and to never, ever underestimate the incredible things people can achieve when vision and will converge. Thank you for exploring this profound mystery with me.